Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome to the meetup. So my name is Andrey Vykhodtsev. Today I'm going to talk about Jupyter. That is a quite a loaded topic. So it actually I don't know if I can fit my talk in 30 minutes, but I will try my best, right? A little bit about me to introduce myself. So I am a software architect by profession. So I work for a small boutique US software vendor called Microsoft here in Slovenia, right? So currently I'm doing home office, but a while back I used to go to the real office as well. So if you wish, you can connect to me on LinkedIn and see, what is my profile, what are my skills. So you're welcome to check it out. I will not go into this in detail, but let's just say that I do use Jupyter quite regularly, and it's a tool of on my tool belt that I cannot say this is an awesome tool, but it's a great tool and I like it a lot, right? So a quick history of how it did appear. A while back, there used to be a project called IPython, and it's in its ancient form. It was basically an improved interactive Python shell that I used to use actually a while back as when I was just starting with Python. I used to use IPython as my primary shell for the computer, and it was quite nice actually, right? But then people introduced the web version of this interactive shell with enriched history and so on, and it became Project Jupyter. Why it is called Jupyter? Because because they said, okay, so we will not only allow to run just Python, so it will be Julia Python NR, and hence the Jupyter name. Although it doesn't stand for, it doesn't hold its meaning anymore, because actually it allows you to run a lot more languages than just those three, right? Why would you use Jupyter? Here are my reasons why I would use it, right? So I use it as an alternative to REPL, right? So repeat, evaluate, whatever process loop, right? I forgot what's the full abbreviation. But basically I use it to run code interactively and test my code quickly, and just kind of try things out. And the benefit is that they are stored in the notebook, as you will see later. So I use it for quick code testing. I use it to work with data, and this is actually a primary use case for me, to use Jupyter to work interactively with data, analyze the data, plot charts, and so on and so forth. So you can use it also to display data, like I said. You can use it to build quickly data products, right? So people who are coming from our world, they used to have an argument that you cannot really do data products similar to Shiny, which is a popular thing in our world in Python. So with Jupyter you actually can. Not since a long time ago, but since recently there are libraries like Voila and so on that allow you to build those interactive kind of data products. Although I will not be showing this today, right? So you can you can use it to connect to other things. A lot of people actually integrate with Jupyters, and they publish and make available plugins to install. And for instance, if you are in big data, right, so you can connect to things like Hadoop and Spark just with Jupyter notebooks and run things on a big cluster, while your basically notebook is on some machine which is not really that big. So you can also just use it to run stuff on a remote server. That's a very simple way. So you can just do some quick installation on a remote machine, and then you can get Jupyter and run stuff on a remote server. You can even get terminal if you allow this access. By default, it is there. Although a proper way to do that requires something that is called Jupyter Hub, which is not a topic of this talk. So this talk is more of more for beginners and for the basic level, to just convince you and show you how you would use it and for what, right? So having said all that, why Jupyter is not great, and this is where people tend to misuse it a lot, right? So when people start doing development in Jupyter, it quickly becomes hell, and don't do that to yourself, right? So don't really develop kind of code in Jupyter. And there are a lot of memes on that on the internet. Like I move from untitled IPyNB file 25 to untitled IPyNB file 26. This is like the default naming convention in Jupyter. So don't develop in Jupyter. I will show you a little bit how do I tend to develop in Jupyter. So it's like a combined approach where I develop the code just for testing there, and just then move it to proper Python files in also controlled by version control system. So why another reason why it is not great for code development is because it's relatively difficult to do diffs and compare notebooks, because notebooks, as I will show you later, and for now we are just speaking theoretically, right? But a notebook is basically a JSON file, and when you put it into a version control system with output, it becomes more or less like gibberish. So it's really hard to compare the versions of this file and interpret them, right? So this is not a good tool for shipping code, for developing code in the version control system. It's a good tool for interactively running code and see the outputs quickly. So I would like you to show you around. And by the way, all of these slides were done with Jupyter itself, right? So this is another kind of use case for Jupyter, and I will show you how to do it. So I would like to show you around. So how do you install Jupyter? So you can do popular package management. You can take your popular package manager like Conda or Mamba, which is a new thing on the new kid on the block, like a faster version of Anaconda. And you can just do installation of this Conda install, or and you can do pip install, right? So the newer version of Jupyter is called Jupyter Lab, which is something that I'm not going to cover as well, but it is really very much similar to what I will be showing you with just classic Jupyter notebook. So this is going to install a classic Jupyter notebook server, right? And then when you have it installed, then you can run it, right? So let me just stop this full screen thing, and I will be switching between notebooks and here. So this is, by the way, how I created this whole kind of presentation, right? So this is the Jupyter notebook. So when you install the notebook and your Python installation, then you can basically run it as a server. So let me just, I don't know, I can maybe stop this one. Let me stop it and just show you that I can stop it and run it again. So you have Jupyter installed, and then you will have, and then you just do Jupyter notebook. There are some options, that you can use here, like for instance, don't start browser by default, but this is what happens by default when you just do Jupyter notebook. And so yeah, okay, it starts. As a rule of demo, something bad should happen. Okay, so it starts this notebook. So this is how the server looks like. It's not a server, but it's like a single user version of this Jupyter notebook experience. So let me just delete that one. The hardest part for me is in the presentations is not getting lost in the windows. So let me just find the one that I used for. Jeez. Okay, so so this is the Jupyter notebook, right? So this is basically where the folder where I started it. So it displays that folder. You can change the folder, but this is by default what it shows you. So it shows you running notebooks. You see, I just restarted it. There are no running notebooks, and yeah. So this was the. So I opened this notebook that I created the slides from to just show you how it works. So in the window where you started it, you can see the logs, and the logs will show you where it runs. You see it runs on a certain port, which is also kind of a parameter that you can control. So you can also see how it is installed and configured, right? So there are different commands that you can use to see where you have all the files. So you can use like Jupyter paths, I think. So you see, oh, somebody is not on mute, guys. Please mute yourself because it's a bit noisy. So Jupyter paths, and this is the only command that I'm going to show you, and it's the most useful one that I really use a lot because I get confused where my configs are for Jupyter. So if you are getting confused, then just remember this command, right? So now I have the notebook. You see here what Jupyter is, right? So in Jupyter there are cells. So cell is basically like a unit of either runnable code or something else. It can be, for instance, Markdown, right? Here, I put a Markdown and it understands regular Markdown syntax. So this is what I put here. This is my LinkedIn profile. So you can, you probably all know Markdown. So you can see that I put a link here and I put an image here, right? So this is the slide. And how did I get the slides, right? So in the cells, I can do in the view menu, I can say cell toolbar and slideshow, right? And this is how I got this slide type things here. So when I have it, I can specify, so this is a slide, this is a slide, this is a slide. And then what I can do, then I can actually issue a command, which will say, Jupyter NB convert to slides. And then I specify this notebook. And then I do this thing, post serve. And this is what it'll give me, right? So it will give me this nicely formatted presentation, which I can scroll. And you see here that I have, for instance, for this pip install notebook. So this is a sub slide. So it means that if I do go back, so this is going to go here, where Jupyter is not great. And then I go to this sub slide section and I can scroll up and down, right? So what next, right? So what I'm going to show next is a little bit of a preview, right? So how I typically use Jupyter, right? So I use it to run code and test it, and play with data, right? So you can import libraries like pandas, numpy, and grab a data set from from somewhere, and then just issue this command, which says, I want my plots to be displayed within the notebook. So then I load the data, and I can display this table. So it has by default it can display pandas data frames in this nice table format. There are plugins that you can use to display it even nicer and have filters and so on. And then you can display charts, and then you can do a lot of different things, right? So this is how you use them and run it. Of course, it's just the tip of the iceberg, right? So you can also run Jupyter from pretty much anywhere else. For instance, VS Code has a pretty good integration with Jupyter. So if you have Jupyter Notebook, you can open it here, and it will actually start another Jupyter Notebook server, and it will display this, and you can run it here, display the stuff, and you can also have here the variables. Then you can browse and also have this for data. You can have a nicer display of tables and so on. So PyCharm has also pretty nice integration, and also a plugin and a product called DataLore, which allows you also to publish notebooks in an interactive format. So you can also go to so I regret pressing that, sorry. You can also do another thing, which I would like to show you. So you can do a Python file, for instance, in VS Code to PyCharm. So they have the same kind of hint here. And then in your VS Code, you can do this comment, right? and then it automatically kind of becomes a Jupyter. It understands that this is a Jupyter thing, right? So and then you can do run cell and so on within your Python file. So you can write Python and then combine this kind of best of both worlds, right? So you can say I would like to run this piece of code as a cell, and then it will pop up this interactive window where you can actually see the results of this code, right? And for the next one, I can do the same thing. The only thing to note here that when you do all those different tools, they all tend to start their own kind of Jupyter server, which quickly, bites at your computer resources, right? And then when you look at the Process Explorer, you will see that, you have a 1,000 of Pythons, and all of them are really, eating your yummy memory and so on and so forth. So be conscious of that. Now, what next? Right. So I will not wait for this one, but just believe me, it works. I'm not using that much, by the way, so these things all that often. I am more of a fan of like a classic way of running Jupyter, right? I'm not even using Jupyter Lab all that much. So I'm a conservative guy, a little in some respects, right? So okay, so next thing that I would like to show you is, so I showed you the basic way. By the way, I propose that we do questions at the end because we have kind of very limited time. So I'm almost half. So magic commands. In Python, you can write a code which will implement kind of a magic command. I will show you an example later. But there are a lot of pre-built magic commands, including the magic command that lists the magic commands, and it's called ls magic. So magics are starting with %. So it's basically a named code that runs some stuff, right? So ls magic gives you available magic commands. ls is a so magic starts with %, so it's called line magic, right? So it means that it only has one line, right? You can also do cell magics. So cell magic is 2%, and I will show you the difference. So ls is another magic that allows you to list the directory, right? Even if you don't have the ls command from Unix installed on your machine. But you can also do bang. If you start something with bang, then it will run it in a shell, right? For instance, here I don't have a ls command because I'm a sad Windows user, right? But so if I do bang dir, so it will execute this dir command from Windows and show me the output. Right? You can also do bang bang, and bang bang means you want this output as a nice list, and you can even kind of assign it to something. And deal with it something there is I don't know, you can do scripting. So this probably comes from the times where it is used a lot for scripting. Nobody uses Jupyter that much for scripting anymore, but you can do it. You can do some stuff. So pip, you can run pip from bang, but there is an important caveat, right? So if you run pip with bang like here, then it will basically run in your shell. And this could be very much different from the environment that you are on in your Jupyter Notebook. Because you see, everything in Jupyter runs in the kernel, right? So you see here, I have 3 kernels installed, and this displays here which kernel I am on. So kernel is actually a config that tells Jupyter how to run an interpreter of something. So a kernel can be an R kernel or a Scala kernel. It doesn't have to be a Python kernel, right? And you can have multiple kernels installed, and you can change them. For a notebook, of course, the notebook will be killed and restart, right, if you change the kernel. Now, if you run a pip like I run it here, so there is no guarantee that the package will be actually installed in the kernel, in the environment where your kernel is, right? So if you want to have this assurance to install in the environment where you are, you use this pip magic command, right? And that guarantees you that you will install it in this particular kernel that you're working on, right? Because it gets really confusing. You install pip, you install packages in Python, and you expect that they appear in this notebook, and then they don't appear, right? this is why. There is also a conda magic, so you can do the same. Oh, okay, so something went wrong. But okay, so I cannot edit here, but I can, of course, because it's a presentation. So I cannot edit slides, but there is also this, you can also write conda, and it's actually the same thing, but for conda. Oh, okay, sorry, I lied to you. There is no conda here. I think it's, if you install some conda installation, then it appears here. Doesn't matter. So let's go. There are a lot of commands that mimic Unix commands, like pwd gives you the current directory, cd changes the directory to your home, or changes the directory to the directory you want to change to, like this one, for instance. So quickref gives you, it's worth running it here. So because you will see how what it can do. It can do a pop-up window and kind of give you the quick reference of all the magic commands, right, in the Jupyter. So you can even publish your code from the notebook with the default magic command called paste bin, right? So only that it doesn't work well with Jupyter notebooks per se, so it doesn't display them nicely. But you can just publish this, this file here, and you can get a link back, and then you can go and just see that file or share with a friend, just just like that, just very easily, right? So you can display your namespace. You can have commands to search the namespace, even though I didn't put them here. So for instance, there is a command called psearch that allows you to search the namespace. By the way, I also wanted to talk a little about the keyboard shortcuts. I would advise you to learn them if you want to work with Jupyter. It really worth your while, right? So you press either H or go to the menu, and then you have this nice sheet here, which you can also print out, and you can have, or you can run it from here, and then you can learn the shortcuts. The ones that I'm using most of all are A and B. So if you press A, it inserts the cell up, on the top of the current cell, and B inserts the cell on the bottom of the current cell, and then Shift Enter executes the current cell, right? So Control Shift M merges the cells. Sorry, but it executed something on Zoom.
Shift M.
Yeah, I think it's Shift. Okay, so Shift M. Okay, yeah, and you are correct, right? So and then Control Shift dash splits the cells into different cells, right? You can also do find and replace, and if you have a big notebook, so just look it up. So there are a lot of functions. There is even like a reference for the whole function. So you can okay, so you want to find, right? You can issue this command, or you can do Control Shift P, and then it will bring this command here, right? So you can say find, replace, find, replace, right? Okay, and then you can search for a command. So this is how you work with the basic Jupyter notebook, right? So finishing up with the magic commands, you can also display Python files in the nicely formatted way. So it can do like this, with all the beautifying. You can measure time, although there is also an extension that can measure all the time of executions automatically, right? So you can have, you can say time here. And then it says, and you see here, it's percent time, because if I put here just 1% time, it will not work, because it expects then the code to follow the time command right away. So you have to do the cell magic, right? So if you do percent time, it says like it ran in 1 second, right? And the time it is the magic command that runs it in does 1,000 iterations, and then it will actually tell you the average of the execution time. So believe it or not, Jupyter also has the embedded debugger, right? So this one took me a while to realize, you know, or maybe like after a year or two working with Jupyter, I realized that you can also debug your code in Jupyter directly, right? So, and just for you to know, so how you do this, you know, so you there is a magic command called PDB. You know, you do PDB on, and then, for instance, if this code runs, well, nothing happens, right? So this is my really stupid code that does free nested function, kind of runs free functions in a nested way, right? And it outputs the output from the first function. Now, if I want to raise an exception here, so I am broken, right? Then it automatically starts this debugger. And then you can issue debugger PDB commands, essentially, to navigate your kind of code space and so on. So the ones I use the most is up and down. So U means up. And now you see I'm in the function 2, right? And then I can look the actually at the namespace of the function 2. And I can prove it by displaying that there is a variable B, and it displays the namespace from variable from the 2, and so on, right? So I can go to function 1, function 3, and then I can say, okay, so sorry, not so I can go to function 1, and then display the space from the function 1, right? Now, an important thing is to know how to. It's kind of like VI, so you have to know how to exit it. Otherwise, you're in trouble, right? So if you don't press Q and you start running other cells, then your Jupyter will hang, you know. And I don't know a good way around this apart from restarting the kernel. By the way, if you want to restart the kernel, it's 0, 0, 0, 0. You just press 0 twice, and then it gives you the option to restart the kernel, right? So if this happens to you, if it hangs, then this is probably because you didn't exit the debugger properly. And by the way, if I want to delete the output quickly of this thing, so I will just turn it to markdown with M, and I will just turn it back to code with Y, right? So this is MY, and this is how I do it typically. So to avoid this behavior and to get rid of the debugger, you just switch it off, you know, so like you switched it on. So the next thing shows you that you can build your own magic. For instance, Databricks is a popular product for analyzing data, and it works with Spark clusters. It is basically a Spark, you know, improved Spark cluster running on some cloud, typically AWS or Azure. So, you know, they have this magic command that allows you to run kind of commands, SQL commands on Spark cluster. And this is how they did it. So I just put it here from their documentation just to show you that you can do those custom commands. And when you put this into your Jupyter config and they instruct you how to do so, then you will get this another magic command, which will be like %% SQL. And you know, then you can run your code, your SQL queries on your Spark cluster, just as an example. So extensions. I'm actually running out of time, but and I have a lot of content that I planned, but I want to show you the extensions quickly. How do you do extensions? You have to do some installation to be able to access extensions. So just let me skip that. How do you write extensions? So this is how you install the extensions, and then when you do that, you get those in the extensions tab here, right? So on the right, this is the installation command, and then you can install extensions. The ones that I find useful, I don't use them a lot, right? But the ones that I found useful at different times are table of contents. So let me enable that one. Actually, I disabled them just before the talk, just to show you that I can enable them ad hoc, right? So, and then execute time. So this one kind of displays after the cell that the time that it took to execute the cell. And then there is a notify that I don't use that much, but it can notify you in the browser. So I will not use that. And there is hide input, right? hide input, which allows you to hide the code for the cell. And what else? Just let me pull in my memory, and that's it, right? So, and then Autoreload, this is a default extension that I use also a lot, right? So I enable those. Let me save this, and then I will have to restart my whole server because otherwise it will not pick those up. So let me just kill it. Let me just kill it. So these are the slides. This is the server. Let me just kill the server. And okay, so and I'm starting back again. It takes a while. So yeah. Okay. We are back in the game. We are back in the saddle. So let's. Okay. So now let's check it out, right? So we should have all those extensions working, although sometimes it's hectic. You know, sometimes you enable them, but they don't appear. I don't know. And I see the low of the demos working well, right? So when I do it alone, it's working quite fast, and when I do it online, it's working really slowly. Okay. Looks like it worked, right? So this is the table of contents extension that we installed, right? So it automatically generated those contents on the left. This is the, oh no, sorry, this is not it. So this is the hide input thingy. So let me just find the longer cell and just do like this, you know. So now it's not displaying the input anymore. For instance, I might want to do this if I wanted to display just this chart on the slide without actually displaying the code that generated that slide, right? Now, another thing that I use a lot, an execute time. Let me just display it here. So let me just find an innocent command to run. Okay, let me just run this one, right? Let me run this cell and it should display. You see now it's the execution time is displaying. So Autoreload is another very useful thing, right? And this is coming more to the topic, like how I work really with the notebooks, right? So I tend to start developing the code in the notebook, and then I move that code into actually just a Python file where I would work with them in a real IDE, right? So to combine those two worlds, right, I typically enable this Autoreload extension, which is you do load extension Autoreload, and then you do this Autoreload 2. 2 means recursive 2 levels, right? So of kind of reloading the dependencies. And then if you do imports of some code continuously, then if you change that code, it will pick it up, right? So otherwise, if you import it once, it will stay like this forever, right? So it allows me to quickly kind of, you know, do the iterations here, run something. If it doesn't work, I fix it in the IDE, and then, you know, I rerun it here, and it automatically picks up the changes. And sometimes I also do this on a remote machine, right? So I have IDE on my local machine, but the Jupyter is somewhere on the remote machine, and I use the synchronization between the two. For instance, PyCharm has the extension for that. You know, Visual Studio Code has also extension for that, so it allows you to do that. And with also some products, you know, like in some servers, like Azure server, allows you to automatically pull IDE from the notebook server and work on a remote machine. How much time do I have left, by the way, guys? Should I finish or not?
Well, yes, I think you should definitely finish if you have like 5-10 minutes of content.
Can I have 5 more?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Okay. So let me have 5 more. I will try to wrap it up really fast. So this is working with data in plots, right? So the primary usage for me is of course do this data munging and plotting, right? Here. So here I just grabbed something from the gallery. You know, you can go to, for instance, matplotlib gallery. This is the library for displaying stuff in Python, right? And then you can grab, you know, some code here and run it, and it will run as is typically, right? So Bokeh is another library that allows you to do interactive charting. Also, this is some just example from their repo. So with Bokeh, you can do more advanced stuff, you know, so it's a bit more verbose, but you can do like interactive plots that from JavaScript, you know, you can do tooltips and so on. You can do very much, you know, a lot of complicated stuff with this Bokeh thing. So another thing that I want to show you is interactive widgets, right? So in Jupyter, you can do interaction. What does it mean, right? You import from IPy widgets, interactive, fixed. You know, this is the basic example from the doc, but I can show you a bit more, something a bit more complex, right? So the basic example would be like this. You write a function that does something, and then you say interact, and as a parameter, you specify the value. So by the value, it already can guess, you know, what control to put there, and then you can just, you know, have this control of a function. You see, it just returns the same number. So if you do, for instance, the same but with Boolean, but it will then, you know, do this check mark instead of the slider, right? So and then you can say text, and then it will just display this text, right? So this is a nice way to put controls in the notebook, and then there are libraries that allow you to actually publish your notebooks with all those interactive controls that will be working. So they will, for instance, Voila is one example, and Panel is another example that allows you to do that. So you can also do decorator with this interact function. It will be kind of pretty much the same version of different version of the same. So this is the interaction, right? So reporting progress in the notebook. So a lot of time I run kind of long things, and you know, it really becomes boring if you don't get a progress bar or you don't see what is happening. So the library that you use for this is called TQDM, right? So this is the progress bar, not for just notebooks. You know, it can do a lot of stuff, but it can, you know, the basic usage is a notebook. So for instance, you have here an iterator, you know, so for instance, a range of 3, right? And then you can just wrap this iterator into TQDM, and it will automatically know how many iterations does this iterator have, if the iterator allows that, and it will display those progress bars that can be nested, you know. And also you can have, let me see if I can display it a bit, yeah, like this, right? So let me just, you know, there is a person in Russia called Petr Yermakov who wrote this extension of this TQDM library for Telegram, right? So you can have a Telegram bot, and you provide, you set up basically the ID of the Telegram bot, and then you can have the same Telegram TQDM progress bar in your Telegram, you know, while you're walking, you know, having a beer, and your model trains, you can see the progress on your mobile device or wherever you have Telegram, right? So this is another cool thing that I also use a lot, right? So this is something that I'm using. So maybe a quick demo if I still have like 2 minutes. I don't know if I will have. Do I have 2 minutes for a quick demo?
Yes.
Okay, so combining all of this together, right? And I hope it will start in a reasonable time. And actually had it running, right? But because I restarted the server a few times, then it's not working anymore. So this is a notebook that I developed for some of the meetups actually in Ljubljana a while back. We were talking about I think Roman, you were there as well, right? So we were talking about the interactive kind of explaining the models, right? So this is kind of importing a bunch of stuff to kind of predict with different models something on the data set. And the data set is the Pokemon qualities, right? So we have Pokemons. Let me just see if I can display any Pokemon's data set, right? Doesn't matter. So this is basically a prediction of Pokemon qualities, Pokemon legendary status based on the Pokemon kind of features, right? So this is the display. So I trained the model. So I have this code that trained the model. So I'm displaying some parameters of that model, like for instance, how well my classifier is doing of legendary versus not legendary Pokemons, right? And this is something that I also want to display, which is a library called Shop. Shop is a library that uses JavaScript, just to show you that you can do JavaScript widgets in the Jupyter, right? So you initialize this JavaScript widget, and then you can have this. I have this function which says display summary, right? You know, it does some displaying. I don't know, doesn't matter, right? And then I run this interact thing, right? That progress, you know, gives you a progress chart, because generating this thing is not fast for SVM, and then displays this chart here, right? So this is the chart, and I can iterate. For instance, I have trained it also on 5 folds, and I can iterate here on display it for fold 0, for fold 1, and for so on and so forth, you know, until I'm bored, right? And so on, right? So I have those interactive charts for different purposes. You can, you know, I will publish this GitHub repo and give you the link later on. But this is a demo of kind of something I'm doing in reality, right? This is it. Questions?
Thank you, Andrey. And yes, please post your questions in the chat if you have any.
Can I have a short question?
Sure.
Do you have any pains with working with notebooks? Is there something you
Yeah,
really
a lot. Yes, a lot of pains. Yes. A lot of pains. The main pain is that you know, the disconnects, right? So if you're running something, right, and then you have the state there, and then if it's a long thing, right, so you run it on a server and you disconnect from that notebook, it's not always possible to connect back and start from scratch, right? So this is why I typically do scripts instead and run them with something like screen in Unix, so that if they run longer, I can reconnect to this kind of thing and see what happened, right? I don't tend to really run, you know, long things in notebooks. Yeah, a lot of pains, you know. So also a big pain is the state management, right? So if you do notebook and it becomes a big one, you have a lot of variables there. You can really mess your kind of namespace up, so that, you know, you have a variable within the function that comes actually into from some different cell in this notebook, and it really creates some unbelievably complex bugs, you know. So that, you know, and this is why it's always important to restart the notebooks periodically, right? So when you develop, you just I made a habit to do the 0-0 restart, you know, like once in a few minutes, and rerun the whole thing. But these are just two, you know. A lot more of pains I have, you know. You just, you know, get me started. Any particular pains that you have, guys? You know, we can share. We can start the pain sharing. We can start the sharing group, right?
Yes, and also continue this group later in the breakout rooms, just so that we don't take up that much time from Matiz, but he's also raising his hand. So I don't know if that means you have a question for Andrey before you start, or because if you do, please go ahead.
Yeah, not particular question, just to point out, as Andrey said, Jupyter has a lot of things, a lot of fancy and cool things, and I think Andrey did a really nice coverage of the useful stuff. But I just wanted to point out perhaps two things which might come useful to the listeners. When Andrey mentioned this PDB on and off, there's also actually the debug magic. Anytime one cell crashes, you can just write %debug and it will jump back into the concrete case that failed. No need to turn on and off stuff like that. It's easier to handle. And then the second one was so when you're using like complex functions or functions which you're not familiar with, you can use a Shift Tab, and then you can tab once, twice, or 3 times to get different levels of verbosity for the function fingerprint, like the parameters and stuff like that. I think you had like a load iris, and you can just start with the semicolon. Yeah. And then a Shift Tab would then show what parameters.
I use that one.
Okay.
I forgot to mention it.
Okay,
but
sorry.
the debug, I want to check it out because I don't know what's the difference if it's the same thing with PDB or not. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I hope it's the same that what I'm talking about. At least this is what I use. Maybe it's dependent.
It's always, every day you actually learn something new, because I was preparing this talk and I already learned like a few new things,
Cool. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for the talk.
Yes, thank you, Andrey. That was a great overview, which I think was interesting for beginners and more advanced users alike. So that's really nice.